Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Homage to the Buddha, the blessed, noble, and fully self-awakened one. I just want to begin by thanking all those people who have organised this lovely little celebration for me. Yes. The organising committee, Aya and Richard and Dea and Mark and Sarah, and all those people really who've made lovely donations to buy this statue that will go back the back of the pond there, and to fund my little trip to Japan. And I was relieved to see that I could get a return ticket. Also, I thank Charles and Heather and Mark and Peter who've done this very professional recording for us. And of course, everybody who's chipped in for today. So we have other birthdays here. Sarah, it's her birthday, and also Andy, who's got the 5-0. Yes, we're all suffering. And I think we can bring to mind Stephen Hawking. We can feel a certain sorrow for David Bowie, didn't quite make his 70. And we can I think we can all join in with a special regard and good wishes to Kim Jong-un in Korea. I am delighted that you've taken such joy in my own little birthday. But of course I myself am depressed. Yes, this is the beginning of the steep, the downward trend to decrepitude and senility. Now there was a card which some thought was telling me that 70 was the new 30. It's not. 70's serious. Okay. So, something peculiar has happened to me this year, in the sense that suddenly, I suppose it's reaching the end of all this building stuff here too, and feeling very settled outside Saripanya. Now, the sort of memories of my past life came up. I mean, this one. No, this one. And of my past living. And you know, I just wondered how it is that I got to this place. So I thought it was an opportunity really to answer the questions that I'm often asked, but I usually palm off with a sentence or two. You know, as to how I became a Buddhist, how I became a monk, and why do I continue? So to start at the beginning there, you see, my father was in the RAF, and they were following the armies up the toe of Italy when he was billeted on my mother's house, and they fell in love. And it seems as though he took AWOL in order to marry her. When he got back to Cyprus, they put him in jail for a while. It's all very romantic. Anyway, he brought her to Britain, and that's when her real depression began. If you can imagine moving from a hillside village overlooking the Adriatic with the smell of pine in your nostrils and ending up in Manchester. Black Manchester. We forget how black the cities were, saturated with soot everywhere and pea soup fog. Anyway, she happily became pregnant with me, but decided to go home to have me. And when the time came, they brought in the local midwife. She was 25, so presumably there was a little difficulty. But either they rushed it or it was her particular way of doing things, but they cut her. No. Such was the agony, she bit into my uncle's thumb, and he showed me the scar. Even then I wouldn't come out. They had to prise me out with forceps. I mean, what a start. What a start. She went on to give birth to 2 more sons and a daughter. So I've got 2 brothers and a lovely sister. The effect of birth upon us. Consider the Buddha. So as soon as he was born, his mother died. So there must be a feeling there of loss, whether the baby's fully aware of it or not. There must be a feeling of loss. And according to certain disciplines like rebirthing, you know, that breathing thing, and Stan Grof, I wasn't going to say hologramic or whatever it is, breathing. The birth trauma has a real effect upon us. You know, it's there within our psyche. So I know this from the difference between my siblings, because my mother said that my sister, who was last, 11 years on, fell out. And she's utterly phlegmatic. Nothing like me. So, that was my birth. Now, I want you to imagine this little 5-year-old boy being taken to church by his father. And he's walking into church. The church is quite big. It's St. Patrick's. It belongs to a 3rd generation of Irish. And as you walk in, your nostrils are suffused with incense, frankincense. The atmosphere is very warm, and the people are very quiet, and they're just sitting there. And you're taken up into the gallery, into the choir loft, and your father is conducting. And at the point where the priest in these wonderful garments comes in with all the altar boys, because it was high mass, you're there as a little boy, a little child, and you're let loose. You can wander around, and you're hanging on to the barrier of the choir, overlooking down into the congregation, and suddenly Bach or Handel or sweet music is coming. So this was my introduction into devotion. I was in ecstasy. See? And it's something that I think a lot of children these days don't get. Not that they don't get it with other things like pop stars and things like that. But it was my introduction into religion as a real heart-based experience. And this was to carry on. So that was, I call, if my first catastrophe was birth, this was my first blessing. And my mother being a Southern Catholic, they were Roman Catholics, so I should have mentioned that. My mother being a Southern European Catholic, it was all about the love of Jesus, you see. And my father was all hell and brimstone, and yeah, I had a nice balance. I obviously warmed towards my mother. Northern Catholicism is very Protestant. So when you convert to a religion, when you actually move into a religion, you move in for various reasons. Most people who come to Buddhism come because they're suffering, because things have gone wrong, and they've heard about meditation and stuff like that. But to actually begin to develop a heart attachment, a good attachment, this isn't, not all attachments are evil, a sort of relationship of the heart with your religion is very difficult, because this is done when you're a child. When you go to Thailand, you'll see little children are brought into the monastery, into the temples, and they bow, and they also have this sandalwood and incense, and they have the chanting. So that's that sense of devotion, which is a beautiful emotional state. It's a mental state of praise, of being in a lovely spaced out place. It's absolutely glorious. And of course you can develop these things into absorptions. That's very difficult for us because it's a different culture. We haven't got that sort of background. So I always think the way into that, the way into a devotional, a sort of heart connection with the Buddha's teaching is through gratitude. And the more that you consider what the teaching has done for you and for others, etc., then you get this gratitude come up. And it's very simple to go from gratitude towards love, towards a relationship. Now, of course, the Buddha is gone. I mean, it's not as though we're relating to the Buddha. What we're relating to is an image within us of the Buddha. And in growing that, in a sense, we're actually forming a devotional relationship to the Buddha within us that we want to become. See? So it's the Buddha as he appears in daily life. It's not the transcendent Buddha, it's the Buddha of compassion, of love, of joy. And that's why I've got all these statues. Okay? That's the idea of devotion. I'm trying to squeeze a bit of Dharma out of my autobiography, okay? So anyway, we moved then to North Manchester, which was all fields at that time, out of dingy Moston into the lovely fields. The fields didn't stay fields long, they were soon built on, and right at the back of us they established a cemetery. So we're at school, there were over 50 kids in the class, right? So I'm 47 was the peak of the baby boom. It begins in 45 and ends in 65. And if you look at the graph, it goes zoop on 47 and then begins to slowly come down. Yeah? So Theresa May is a boomer. So then, while I was at primary school, a priest turned up. And he gave us this wonderful talk with pictures about the missions. He showed us pictures of Flores, which is a beautiful island in Indonesia. He showed us pictures about New Guinea, and he showed us pictures about South America. And he talked about the wonderful things that priests did out there, missionaries. And if anybody felt like they might be drawn to that sort of thing, then they should get in contact. So anyway, I got the 11+, and I went to Xaverian College, which was a grammar school. But two of my friends from that school went to St. Richard's College. And during that year, for some reason, it came to me that that's what I wanted to do. My mother was fiercely against it. But my father was like that, but it was my Aunt Rose who really wanted a priest in the family. Come the age of 12, I'm off on the train down to St. Richard's College. And for me, it was entering into 2 years of undiluted heaven. Because it was all about doing exactly what you want to do. And that's when you're most happiest, isn't it? When you're doing exactly what you want to do, in an unpressured situation, you're in perfect joy. Correct? For instance, a hobby, right? So the routine there was up about 6:30, 7 o'clock. We went down for Mass. After Mass, we went out in most weathers, only in the most severe, to do the old army exercise. Hup, two, hup, two, hup. Back into breakfast, clean up. School starts 9 o'clock, all the way through to 5 o'clock. And all that time, apart from a little break at lunch, and I remember it was in silence. Can you imagine that for a 12-year-old these days? Yeah? And at 6 o'clock, we went into study, and at 8 o'clock, we were finally let free and we could play games down in the big game room. Imagine a 12-year-old today. Huh? And I really got into it. I mean, it was, all I remember is just being blissed out and hating going home, and having to come back because it was just there that I found my joy. Then something began to happen which promised a different sort of joy. It promised gold, but it turned into glitter. And the joy it promised finally ended up with frustration. Puberty. Even Mick Jagger could get no satisfaction. And he tried. Anyway, we were let out every so often to go for a walk on a Sunday. And there were about 6 of us, 5 of us on the trip. And as we got down, we suddenly had this idea that we'd smoke. Now, teenagers are by nature rebellious. The order didn't smoke. And it was a German order begun by a German priest. And it was mainly German and American. And the joke was, we don't smoke, so we drink. SVD, okay? And so it was a sort of little rebellion to go and get some cigarettes. And we decided to steal them. There was an old lady who ran a shop at this bridge on the Worcester Canal. And as we entered in, we'd had it all figured out. Somebody distracted her and somebody took the cigarettes. And I can't remember what my job was. And I daren't. So I'll leave that. Well, we smoked, of course. And that when we got back, in the evening after lunch, we were all called to the prefect's office, one headmaster prefect. And he told us that, he asked us, had we taken cigarettes from this lady? And we all said yes. She was no fool, huh? We were probably the only customers the whole day. There's nobody out in the middle of nowhere. So we were dismissed, and we thought, well, that's it, you know. There was no corporal punishment in this seminary at all. If I was at Xaverian, you'd have been beaten. Anyway, about a day or so later, we were all called for a talk in this big classroom, and the rector, who was in charge of the whole place, announced that certain boys had stolen, and he called our names and he said, "You are expelled." Can you imagine that? I was 3 months off my GCEs, and they kicked me out. Anyway, I got back, and because of that, my GCEs went all over the place. I had about 4 GCEs. I had to take my English again. And unfortunately, because the education was mainly by Americans, who I don't think really understood the English GCE system at the time. So what happened was, I ended up with subjects that I had virtually no interest in: Latin, French, and history. I had a bit of interest in history. And so life went on, and I didn't do well at the GCEs. And I remember talking to my father about this. Now, when they expelled, when I was thrown out, that was a cut-off of a vocation. This vocation to be a priest remained in me as a really strong, tremendous urge for 3 years till I was over 19. Why couldn't I go back? Why couldn't I go back? It's because they never forgave me. I can't tell you how important it is to forgive your enemies. What happened was, come the GCE, I turned up and they gave me a room in an outer building. I had to go into the exam room at a different entrance from everybody else. I wasn't allowed to talk to anybody, and they weren't allowed to talk to me. In other words, I was excommunicated. And there was no way you can come back on that. See? If a priest or somebody come up and said, look, give it a couple of years and then, you know, you can join another order, I'd have had an in. But I had this block, I couldn't move. So if you have any pity on your enemies, on all of them, do forgive them, because it allows them to forgive themselves. And of course, in our offering forgiveness, we empty our own hearts of, you know, the revenge and the hurt and all that sort of stuff. Now, that doesn't mean to say that you've got to have somebody's forgiveness in order to forgive yourself, but it just makes it much easier. Okay? So I went on then to about 19, and my father pointed out to me that since I was lost, I hadn't a clue what to do with my life at this point, right? I'm completely lost. He said, why don't you teach? He said, you can travel with teaching. So he must have known I was, you know, unsettled. So I decided, I didn't get into university, so I went down to St Mary's College, which was then a Catholic training college. It's now a university. And it was the year they were introducing the B.Ed. And instead of doing the B.Ed, I did the other offering, which was a degree course and a teacher training course. And it was during this time that I completely forgot about being a priest. I finally began to enjoy a bit of life. But there's this underlying meaninglessness, there's this underlying boredom that comes because nothing you're doing is of any direct meaning to your own heart. And so what you overlay it with is distraction. You know, you get drunk, you chase women, you do all sorts of daft things. And that went on for a little while until... and it was during that time I fell in love. Oh my goodness. Well, you know what the first time is, you see. So I'm completely sozzled, right? And on one steamy, love-drenched night, she fell pregnant. This was my third catastrophe. So now in a Catholic community, for that to happen is a horror story. The abortion law had just been introduced, so it was legal. Which let's not confuse legal with moral, just because in a liberal society, many of our personal decisions are left to us. But I just couldn't go there. It just wasn't on my to-do list, getting married and having children. So we struggled with it. We both struggled with it. She would have been, I think, happy going that way. And eventually I had to be true to my own heart. And I went up to visit the parents and I said, look, I can't marry. I said, but I'll support them. It was a sort of way of getting myself into that position where eventually I'd sort of marry. It was a sort of an in-between place which I felt sort of happy with, but I wasn't entrapped. And then finally I'd probably give in. But to the family, it just wasn't a no-go, and they just saw disaster for her daughter. They had connections with surgeons and stuff, and so she had an abortion. I never felt really bad personally about that because I was never brought into that decision making. And of course I'm part of that whole process. But if you go on the website and just type in something like reactions to abortion, you'll see pages after pages of men and women who really regret, no matter what good reason they had, actually regret that whole process. So it's there, shall we say, within my psyche that at some part of my life there was an abuse of my sexual powers, you know, even though it was a very wonderful moment. And Buddhism is no different from other religions. As soon as there's conception, there's consciousness. So there's a living being. There's no way out of that. Okay? That's what's understood anyway. And this further, I think what this did to me was it further alienated me. It further alienated me from my own heart. It further put me into a position of what you might call an underlying despair, which I never really looked at. It was just there underneath it. The boredom, the meaninglessness, and then this tragedy and all that just lay down upon me as a sort of despair, which every occasion would actually land me in a sort of angry depression. But it never lasted long because I'm very sanguine. And then one day, I was 21, 1968, very important date, 1968. That was the student revolutions, if you remember, in Paris and all that. And I lay in bed on a Sunday and I said to myself, I wonder what will happen if I don't go to church. Now in those days, if you didn't go to church, it was a mortal sin. And if you didn't get to confess to a priest and you died, you went to hell forever. I mean, that was the teaching. So it was a big decision, right? They changed all that in the mid-60s with Pope John the 23rd. And I said to myself, if I don't go to church today, what will happen? You know, let's see what happens. Nothing happened. So I never went again. I know, it's the most ridiculous ridiculous thing to, I do it where. And what it manifests really was that the religion had now lost that connection of devotion. It had just become an empty ritual. I was just turning up for the Mass, receiving communion, etc., and it had lost its potency. And I think also there might have been guilt about the abortion and all that sort of stuff, and so there was a cut-off there. Now what this did, of course, was it deepened my alienation. It deepened my alienation to the whole thing. In other words, I found myself where Nietzsche found himself. I only discovered Nietzsche fairly recently, because sort of God is dead, we've killed him. And Nietzsche struggled with that. I mean, he came up with the answer of a sort of the courage to face the sufferings and the death of life, and to sort of somehow rise above it. And that's what he meant by the Superman or Supraman, the Übermensch. The Buddha himself, if you remember, had that sort of existential crisis. I mean, he puts it in the myth. There's a myth surrounding, seeing a sick person, an aging person, and a corpse, and this person sitting under a tree. And the whole thing is about him in his young 20s coming to realise that actually what he's heading towards is sickness, aging, and death, and that this image of the samana, of the recluse sitting under a tree, suggested some sort of an escape. So we have to, I think, imagine the Buddha, that he himself is going through an existential crisis, and it's so strong within him to find the answer to this that he leaves his family. In his case, his just born child. So there's this. So I think from our point of view, this is where the Buddha's at. He really doesn't. The meaningfulness of life has gone. It's an existential angst, right? And that's where I was really with this existential angst. Now, I don't really give you the impression that I was going around moping and all that. No, I was still getting drunk and having a good time. It's just that every so often in silent moments, just by yourself, you suddenly sink into this area of just sheer boredom, a sort of a despair about life, and that you're just living it. And then came my third blessing. We went to see Waiting for Godot by Beckett. Now, some of you probably don't know that play because it's years old now. But it's basically about two tramps who are having these gorgeous conversations, waiting for Godot. Godot's going to come and sort it all out. And the same thing happens in the second act. And in the first act, two people come, walk across the stage. They don't go into too detail, but when in the second act, one's gone blind and the other one's gone dumb. And in the first act, there are leaves on the tree. In the second act, there's no leaves. So here are the two tramps waiting for Godot, and everything's just getting worse. I came out of that play, even though it was just an amateur production by a college, absolutely enthused. I couldn't stop talking about it. They all thought I'd gone mad. But to me, it just caught this whole existential problem of what is the point if in the end you just die. And I thought at this point, just to get across this, I'd read out a poem by Beckett, which I came across much later. I spent a lot of time writing about nothingness, well, doggerel anyway, and like what it meant to just come to the end, to just finish, and that's it, you're gone, is it? So let me just read this little poem to you, see what you think. Just think, if all this, one day, all this, one day, one fine day, just think, if one day, one fine day, all this stopped. Get it? So that was the underlying existential problem, right? That I was sort of battling with. In terms of my emotional life, when I wasn't sort of being extrovert and going out there, there was this. There's a lovely poem by Gerald Manley Hopkins that gets it across, and I carried this now for a long time. But it gives you an idea of. I think it's just a wonderful piece of poetry. I wake and feel the fell of dark, not day. What hours, what black hours we have spent this night. What sights, heart, you saw, ways you went, and more must in longer light's delay. With witness I speak this, but where I say hours, I mean years, I mean life. My lament is cries countless, cries like dead letters sent to dearest him that lives, alas, away. I am gall, I'm heartburn, God's most deep decree, bitter would have me taste. My taste was me. Bones built in me, flesh filled, blood brimmed the curse. Self-yeast of spirit, a dull dough sours. I see the lost are like this, and their scourge, to be as I am mine, their sweating selves, but worse. Ooh, isn't that good, eh? Whew, their sweating selves. I love it. So then, actually, I've gone and forgotten my centerpiece. I'm so sorry. I'll have to go back to my birth. Do you mind? I'm sorry, I don't know what's wrong with me. After that terrible birth, we seem to have both recovered. Eh? I hadn't seen this picture for years. And when I saw it, I thought, well, blow me down. See? And two things came to mind when I saw it. I thought, first of all, we remember our mothers as old, you know, in old age. We forget they were all lovely young women. Yeah? And the other thing was that little child. If it was just shown to me, there's no way I'd make a connection with that child at all. Yeah. I mean, this is the 10th body. Hair. Maybe. Well, no, he's got hair. He's got hair. There's no way I'd make a connection. This is my 10th body, if we're to believe biology. Every 10 years, you completely change all the atoms in your body. Anyway, sorry about that. I'll leave it. So, okay. So I leave. The relationship breaks up. I can't handle it anymore. So anyway, I'm in Spain and I'm looking for my friends, and I've lost them. I've arrived there sometime later, and I pick up a telegram from the local post office. Do you remember telegrams? Yeah, fantastic. Eh? You get down to the telegram, and it said, "Congratulations, son, BA and teaching certificate." And I went up onto a high rock and overlooked the sea, and I said to myself, "There's no way in this world I want to teach." So I went down and camped in this camp. And that night there was a torrential rain. I woke up with the tent around me, completely sodden with sand and everything. Staggered to the drink area, the what do you call it? It's where people drink and stuff like that. And looking pretty miserable for myself. And I met this bloke called Dave, and we began talking. And by the end of the evening, we decided to travel together across the world. Simple as that. See? So I came back and I got a job through somebody I knew as a rep for selling audio visuals to schools. And there was lots of money in education, so I made lots of money. And I was travelling all over Cornwall and all over Wales selling this stuff to schools. And I gathered something like £1,000, which must be, what? It's a lot of money these days, isn't it? £1,000. And come the year, off we went. And during that time, remember, all this time I've got this thing going on, this nothingness and this stuff in the heart. But because of the joy of travel, just the constant new information coming in and the liveliness of it, it was all sort of underneath. It would only come up in the gloomier moments. See? So anyway, we went off and we started off towards North Africa. We went down to, saw all the stuff in Egypt, the usual stuff, you know, ride a camel and all that. Went over to Khartoum, lay on the luggage rack to sleep and woke up with sand everywhere because of a sandstorm. Got onto a boat down to Juba, which is now the capital of South Sudan, and for 10 days we were looking at the amazing sight of reeds. The reeds were so tall they went up above the boat, and the boat just ploughed through this canal, which was the Nile, and all you saw for 10 days was reeds. And because we didn't have much money, we were just eating bread. So this was a really gloomy time, and that's when I wrote most of my doggerel about nothingness. Yeah. Got down to Juba, we flew across to Entebbe, we made this amazing bus ride across Africa. I slept on the back seat, and every so often I was in mid-air as he ran over an elephant, which is unbelievable. Got to Mombasa, stayed with his brother, but we didn't get on so well, so we went up the beach and camped up there. And there we got stolen. All our travelling checks were stolen, which was fantastic because when you got to India, you got on the black market and made a lot of money. Terrible, isn't it? And they stole my father's watch. He'd given me this gold watch that he had been given after he'd finished his time as a headmaster at St. Patrick's. And it had inscribed on it at the back, and it was a precious thing, you know, and I lost it. So I wrote him a letter expressing my sense of sorrow and my love of him and all that, you see. Well, when his reply came back, you know, about 3 or 4 months later, he said, "Thank you, son, bit sentimental." So we get to India. So we get this cattle boat across the ocean, across the Indian Sea from Mombasa to Bombay, playing chess all the time. Lots of travellers, by the way. There wasn't many going down Egypt, but by the time we got to Africa, the boat was full of Westerners. It was all hippies. Yeah, I was dressed in purple. So we take this boat all the way across to Bombay, and we do the usual trip. And we finally ended up in Nepal, and that's when we got really stoned. Up in Nepal, lots of these scones full of dope. And there were these lovely hippie sort of gatherings where we'd all sit in a circle with a chillum. That's so ridiculous, isn't it? And so then, and that lasted for a while. And then we made our way down to Calcutta, and Calcutta was at war. That was the Indo-Pakistan war where Bangladesh split off. And so there was no planes going out or anything. So we stuck there for 2 weeks. And what I did every day. So this was one of my big awakenings. When you went to India, this time it wasn't so bad. But in those days, sickness, destitution was in your face. It was in your face. And in Calcutta, they have a huge park with this massive statue of Queen Victoria, which I presume they got rid of now. And there was a massive road, circular going around. That road was packed tight with the sick. Elephantitis, everything, apart from lepers, all the way around. And they were lying on the pavement. And when you saw that, you understood Mother Teresa's compassion, you know, because many of them would have died just there. So anyway, I saw that. That sort of thing I'm not used to. I'm not ready to receive. I'm aware of the suffering, but I'm not ready to receive it. Every day I went to this Sikh restaurant to get curry, and I would always ask for a glass of water. And when they brought the glass of water, which was a pint glass, it'd always leave a nice oily thumbprint on the side, on the inside. I don't know how it was that I was in India for so long and never caught anything. It was just weird. Every day I passed this woman who had a huge goiter. And she sat there absolutely silent, holding a little thing for coins, and her eyes were always glazed with tears. Right? She just sat there, never looked at me, just sat there. And as I passed on the other side of the road, I always saw her. Day after day, I passed that poor woman, and I never gave her a penny. So then I'm coming round a corner. I'm just wandering around Calcutta, and I come round a corner, and right before me, there's this little girl. She must be over 7, but she looks round about 5. And she's sucking a dried black banana peel. And she sees me, and as she sees me, she has the dignity and that destitution to cover her sex. And that hit me so hard that I just bombed past her. I never went back to buy her a banana. It just hit me so hard. That was my little boy drowned on the beach moment, you know, where you suddenly, the awareness of compassion is not enough. There has to be that contact. You see. Anyway, that passed, and then that stays with me every time I bring that image to mind. If I feel callous about anything, about say refugees and all these sort of people, I just bring that little child to mind, and that's my connection with all the suffering that's going on these days. So we're in Calcutta, and we did a couple of naughty things, and we had opium. Opium's wonderful. And I was laid out there all night, and I remember waking up and just watching all these cockroaches going over Dave's body. I went into the toilet, and there was cockroaches everywhere. It sounded as a cockroach. I thought, fantastic. Anyway, I woke, and all my trouble's gone. Like, you know, what is all this business? Nothingness, you know, it's just stupid, you know, get rid of it all. I'm just absolutely blissed out. Then, of course, it wears off when I'm depressed and anxious again. So before long, we're off on a flight. We're going to Bangkok. And we do the usual tourist trip. I'm wandering into all these beautiful Buddhist buildings. That's it. Yeah. I have no connection at all with Buddhism. For me, they're just museums. And again, a bit of naughty stuff and cocaine and all that in Bangkok. And none of it really held. It was only years later when I read that book, Emotional Intelligence by Goleman, which was, you know, brought this whole thing about emotional intelligence into consciousness, that he says in it, if you're a depressive, you tend to be drawn to those sorts of drugs that lift you out of your depression. These are not hallucinatory drugs, yeah. And if you are an anxious person, you're drawn to alcohol. Well, that's me, isn't it? So we left Bangkok. We went down through Malaysia. And then we had to walk across the bridge to Singapore. And as we got to the checkpoint, they sent us back to get the haircut. Fascists. So we had to cut my hair off, all of it, and then come back. And then we stayed in, and then we took this boat, which was a real proper, lovely little boat, all the way to Port Moresby. It was on its way to Cairns and down to Australia. And that was New Guinea. We flew then from New Guinea to Madang, and I took up my post as a teacher in the Society of the Divine Word Missionary School. Yes, I contacted them again, and I got this job, myself and Dave. He taught art, and I was teaching English. So that was a great sort of year, and teaching those kids, you know, they actually want to learn, you know what I mean? And, you know, great things like climbing Mount Harbour, going up this boat, which was run by a priest who was really a sort of dislocated cowboy. He went up and down barking orders in that strident sort of American thing, giving sermons, selling things and shooting crocodiles. He had this huge rifle. And it was during that time because I was settled, and as soon as I was settled, you're kidding. Blow me down after the rush, aren't I? And because I'm unsettled, I've got years to go yet. I'm only at the age of 25. I'm not even 25 when I get there. So anyway, I've got this dreadful thing going on. You know, this nothingness. I go back from teaching, I don't know what it was, I lie on the bed and I'm suddenly suffused with this enormous fear. And for something, I don't know, I must have got it from somewhere, I turn towards the fear and I go into it, and next minute I'm out of my body. I'm up there looking down, I turn round, I see that tunnel, swirling tunnel, and I'm back into the body. All fear of death disappeared. Not the fear of dying, all fear of death disappeared. And suddenly, out of the blue, I start writing plays. I start writing plays. So then, that was all I've got. I can't rush it. No, I'll have to stop midfield. So then I I go down to Australia because I'm interested in theatre, and I go to a training school really to learn the art of theatre because I know virtually nothing about it. And that's where I fall in love again. Hijacked. So we have a lovely relationship, it's going fine, and we're involved in theatre. I get 1 or 2 plays going. And suddenly this idea of marriage comes up, you know. And my brother just got married, and I was 27, and that's what you do, you know. But in my heart of hearts, I wasn't with it at all. But because of the relationship and because of the love and all that, you get married. And so we went through a civil service, and there was something in me that just couldn't handle this. And I was getting, you know, I was sort of overly happy, And I remember my dear best man, as we got into the taxi, said to me, "You know, Pete," that's what it's called. "You know, Pete, you got to take something seriously." Well, it was a disaster because somebody who had been a friend, a companion, a lover, somebody whom I shared theatre with, suddenly became a burden. I'd fallen into the patriarchal trap. She became a burden. And we went on a honeymoon, and I sort of drained it of joy. And she said to me at one point, "You know, if you carry on like this, I'll leave you." Now, that's not the sort of conversation you have on a honeymoon, is it? You don't have that sort of... Is it really? And it was absolutely awful. We got to London, and my brother offered us lodgings. And hitting London in November, it was beginning of summer in Australia, you know, it was, and the rain and the cold, and then we hit the theatre, and it was just overwhelming. I mean, Sydney was a small city, you know, a little small city with a major theatre and a couple of little outlets. You hit London, and it's just impossible. I sent my plays off, and I would follow them up, and I got one play back, and it had 600 written on it. I mean, it was just overwhelming. I was so depressed, and we were so depressed. I was dragging her down. I was dragging her down too. We were at the SOAS, it's a School of Oriental and Asian Studies. And while we were there, this Nigerian approached us, and he said he was taking a troupe out to Nigeria and would we be interested. Well, we were completely lost. We just said yes. And he went and gave us lodgings. He said, "I'm going to get the group together in a house." So I left my brother, went to this house, and it was just an empty room with a mattress in it. We had to put a line up for the clothes. And we were there for about 2-3 weeks, and nothing's happening. And we're saying, "Larry, can you show us the play? Can you show us the play?" And finally he shows us this play, and it could have been written by a 10-year-old. And it was an inverted racist play. It was all about this great black chief who was going to teach these stupid white people something. And myself and Chris, by the way, her mother was Aboriginal and her father was English, we just looked at each other, "Oh, got to get out of this. Very fortunately, I'd lost contact with Dave, my travelling companion. And as we got onto a tube, he was right there. I said, "Dave, see?" Just as a wonderful thing, he was moving out of a flat in Highgate. We were down in Kentish Town, and it just worked for us. So the night before, we'd planned the escape because there must have been something in us that told us something like this would happen. We told him that we weren't going to come. That evening he came round, and he went ballistic. I mean, it was racist. It was awful. And my wife stepped forward and slapped his face. He made for her. I grabbed hold of him. I'm on the floor with him. I'm holding him down. I'm shouting, "Relax, Harry, let go." Finally, when he gives up the struggle, we both get up, and he's standing there, and he goes off again. I said, "Yeah, you know," and I'm very penitent, and I'm saying, "Get back." And finally he left. That night we slept with doors up against with chairs up against the doors and a carving knife. I slept with a carving knife, just in case. It was every day. 7 o'clock in the morning, we were in that taxi and off we went. Anyway, it just got worse. It just got worse and worse and worse. And eventually my wife got a job in a theatre company up in Birmingham. And really, that was the first leaving. We both knew something was wrong. We knew it wasn't working. And her leaving really was the beginning of that, of her leaving me. I went back home really depressed. I was back in teaching FE. I mean, it was awful. And I was getting nowhere with my plays. There was a fantastic opportunity when the director of Earl's Court Theatre actually asked me to come along. I had an interview with him. And we were discussing this play I'd read. I mean, you don't do that with a top director. And I didn't have the energy to go back with another play. I didn't keep the contact. I mean, that's what you do. Once you got your foot in, you keep pushing. And so I'm getting slowly depressed, lack of play. And that's when Chris tells me that she's fallen in love with somebody else. So, apart from the ego thump, the affection had sort of almost disappeared, really. So there wasn't that sense of loss that you might get from somebody whom you truly love. But it put a cap on my situation. I mean, I was getting nowhere. Plays were no good. I was teaching, which I hated doing. I was going nowhere. So I was in a state of absolute despair. And I was in a state of shock and despair. I thought, well, everything I'd built up these last years has been absolutely, it's just collapsed. And then it came to me that it was the most rational thing to do, the most obvious thing to do. In fact, it was common sense. I had to go to Japan to meditate. I don't know how that came. I'd read a book on Zen Buddhism in Sydney, and I'd walked from where I lived to the shops, looking at myself, observing myself. By the time I got to the shops, I thought, no, it's going to drive me crazy. So that was it. That's my Zen. That was all I knew. So I wrote to the Buddhist Society. How do we find places before Google? It's a mystery, isn't it? Anyway, I wrote to them, and they wrote back and gave me 21 reasons as to why I shouldn't go to Japan. But they put me in touch with Throstle Abbey that had only recently opened up in Hexham in Northumberland. And from them, they put me in touch with Vajrayabeli, who was teaching in Birmingham, just a bus ride away from where I was living. So I remember going there on a cold February day, and she was very zen, and the house was cold, and we got up to the room, and there was a couple of Greek people there, and then she took us into the shrine room. We all bowed, and I thought, this is ridiculous. And then, then she sat me on a stool, and she pushed my back in and sat me upright, and then she said, just watch, keep your eyes open like that, and the instruction was, watch what comes up. So I sat there for 40 minutes in absolute agony, both emotionally and physically. But by the end of it, I was just convinced this was going to get me out of this hole. And she had a room in the house which wasn't occupied, so I went to lodge with her. So that was February. By July, I had a job, which was a really easy one, teaching English to foreign students. And I'd bought a house. And everything sort of began to move in that way. That was my last catastrophe. That was my last big catastrophe. I've had catastrophes since, but they're only small C's. Right? And so I carry on doing that. I've lost my plot now, just a minute. Where am I? Oh, yes. Then I go up to Zen, and being part of a Zen monastery was like being back in St. Richard's. It just came to me just with such ease. I loved going up there, even during the summer holidays. I'd spend six weeks up at the Throstle Abbey. And then one day I came back and I lay on the bed, and this tremendous fear just filled the whole of my body, every cell. I felt it everywhere. And there came this picture of this little boy, 2 years old, going into the front room, shaking my grandfather and saying, he's dead, they've killed him, now they're going to kill me. 2-year-old. So I said to my father, I found grandfather dead in the front. He said, no, he died in bed, I was with him. So this tells us a lot about trauma, children's trauma. Obviously my parents weren't getting on, they didn't. Not so well anyway. And I'm thinking I'm the problem. And they go in and they presume they've killed my dear old grandfather. And I presume they're going to kill me. Now, what happened when that trauma came up? So you have to be very careful with childhood memories, right? Because you don't know what you're laying on them. actually, in the memory, I speak to myself in English, but I don't think I had an English. In fact, I doubt if I could speak at the age of 2. But that was the thought. And what happened then was, I got a series of images coming through my life to tell me how this trauma had cancered every one of my relationships. There's your karmic line. It was just so plain in the face, it was unbelievable. And then shortly after that, a little bit longer after that, I mean, that was such a wonderful relief. And then shortly after that, I'm walking along the road, and on the other side there's a copse of wood. And as I turn into the copse of wood, I get this thump on the head. This energy comes down into the heart, it shoots out towards this tree, and what I'm looking at is a kaleidoscopic vortex of energy reaching up into the sky. Can you imagine that? Can you imagine that? Right? So if you can imagine it, I just turn towards a copse of wood, there's this gentle thump on my head, energy comes down in the centre of my body, it bursts out of my heart centre, and what I'm looking at is one tree amongst them all, which is this multicoloured, kaleidoscopic vortex of energy reaching up into the sky. So for a while I was blissed out, and I remember particularly looking at this crimson geometry of a rose. And that lasted for an hour or 2, and then I got depressed and anxious again. Now, if you were to ask me, if I had a choice between those two, what would I have gone for? This sort of vision or this purification of the heart? No choice. You go for the purification of the heart, because that's something you can do. You can't make these other things happen. And they seem to come to cap a certain level. They don't come to begin something. They seem to end a process. So I don't think that would have been possible, that sort of insight or vision or whatever it was. It would have been possible without the clearing of the heart. Now, if you look at the Dhammapada, the Buddha puts the practice as stop doing evil, do good, purify the heart. This is the teaching of all the Buddhas. It's as simple as that. So this purifying of the heart, what we go through when we're sitting there with all these gunge coming up, that is something that we can actually do something directly about. Now, when it comes to this other thing, this bump on the head, what do you think, God? Big being? Or just neurons firing through your head, just atomic, subatomic activity, which is firing through the head. The thing is, I don't know. Right? It didn't feel like a personal God. It didn't feel like, it just felt as though I was given this gift, and I've remained at that level. So if something happens like that to you, you don't have to expand it into some sort of huge cosmology. It's just something that you receive. It's just an interesting thing. And what I understood by that was that the whole of this phenomenal world is nothing but light. It's nothing but energy, and that matter is just the coagulation of it. That's all it is. That's what it's made of. There's nothing real. There's nothing substantial in it. Anyway, all that passed, and I carried on teaching. And what are we doing? Almost time. 3 minutes. Oh, for heaven's sake! I'm only at the age of 30. I've only got. Oh God! I'll have to give up. I didn't think it'd take this long, actually. I obviously like doing it. So, there's a lot more really, but I know. Anyway, let me just see what I can quickly.
So you can carry on, and we can keep the donation.
We can keep the
donation.
Yeah. Yeah.
We can just avoid all that stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Well, the story then is basically how I became a Buddhist. I went up to Throstle, I joined the Zen monastery. I then, through Vajrayabhali, I met the Theravada monk, and I did a retreat with him. And in that retreat I was drawn. Then the next year the Mahazis came, and that gave me a real technique in which to really delve into myself in a way that Zen hadn't really done. And it was from that I decided to take a sabbatical from work, And I went to Burma with my teacher for 6 months. And when I came back, I was really, during that time, this whole business of impermanence became even more clearer, because there I actually clearly saw that although this might be, what I'd seen about this tree might be true out there, what's actually true in here is the arising and passing away minutely of consciousnesses. And that's actually what we're experiencing all the time, just this screen which is flashing inside us. And what is it that's aware of it? What is it that is looking at it? And that, of course, is our satipanya, that's our intuitive awareness. And it's that separation which is the process of liberating ourselves from the delusion of thinking that we are this psychophysical organism. So when I got back, I was really fired up. I was going to make a go of it. I got back to college, to the college I was teaching at, and they gave me a promotion, for heaven's sake. Can you believe that? So I thought, well, this is what I've got to do. I'll take a sabbatical every so often. I'll come back and get a promotion. So they gave me a promotion. And then during that time, I was ready, really, to move into, you know, the whole thing of marriage. I bought a new house. It was a semi-detached house. And during that time, I began to fall in love again. Oh, my goodness. And so there was then this sort of real potential, you see. But something else started to creep in, which was, why don't I spend 3 years as a monk? Now, the monastic order was established by the Buddha exactly for that reason. When you look at the rules of the monastic order, you end up simply learning the Dharma or meditating. There's nothing beyond that if you're keeping the rule as he would want it, And the whole infrastructure that comes with it in a society is that it holds you there. It holds you in that place. So I struggled with that for about a year, making lists for and against, and for and against. And finally, when it really got on top of me, I went to see Revata, my teacher, and I said, Bhante, I want to become a monk. And he said, you're too old. What a relief. Let's get back and live properly. So that was it. But it wouldn't leave me. So come another 6 months, I'm back to him and I'm saying, listen, I've got to, I really have to ordain. Even if it's only for 3 years, that was my intention, a 3-year ordination. So again, he said, well, no, he said, you're needed here. I'd become now so much part of that vihara, and there were only a few of us. He wasn't the type of person who collected people. So there was only about 3 of us who held the whole vihara up. So again, I went away, but this time I wasn't so convinced. I spent 2 weeks in meditation with a good friend who read Lord of the Rings while I was suffering in the other room. if you're listening, Peter, you'll remember. And I came back absolutely determined. And when I went to see him again, he said, okay. So I ordained for 3 years, and I remember telling my mother, and she burst into this enormous veil of tears, and I put my arm around her. I said, Mum, I said, it's only for 3 years. And she stopped. In Catholicism, if you're a monk, you disappear. These days they're not so strict, but you disappear into the monastery, you don't see them again. So there was a lovely feast for that ordination, and I went off to work with Goenkaji in his monastery, in his centre in Igatpuri, India. And there was something came out of my neck, some snake or other. It was absolutely awful. And I came back feeling I'd got rid of some big thing, and who should be there at the vihara but U Pandita, Sadhu Pandita, some of you might know. He's one of the prime teachers of the Mahasi tradition, who invited me to come and join him in Burma. So before I did that, I thought, well, why don't I go and live at Amaravati, the big monastery there, and really get to know what it is to live in this community. So I turned up there, and it was during that year that there was that demonstrations in Burma and on all the killing and everything that they did. It was the one before the one that finally made the military pull back. So I decided not to go. And then in the turning of the year, I said to the Sangha, I said to the monks, listen, I ought to go and tell Sadhu Pandita why I've not turned up. So I went to his retreat in IMS, that's Barre, Massachusetts place. And as soon as I walked into the meditation hall, I just knew this was it. I didn't want to live in that sort of forest community type of monasticism. I wanted this hard grind, full on full metal jacket, meditation. So I decided to go to Burma. But I couldn't get in. I got to Bangkok, I couldn't get a visa. I ended up in a monastery in the north. I finally caught up with U Pandita down in Penang, and I did a retreat with him in Penang there. And by this time I'm despairing again, because it's 4 years, I'm not getting anywhere. I determined 3 years. I thought, well, give it another what. So I'm kneeling in front of the Buddha statue and I'm saying, look, I've done what I can. I said, if nothing happens in another year, I'm going to go back and do something useful. So there was a German monk there whom I was talking to, and giving him all my sorrows and telling him where I was and all that. And he said to me, why don't you go to Sri Lanka? Oh, Sri Lanka, I never even thought the miles he was out there. So I wrote to Venerable Upali, who was the abbot, and he wrote back and said, come. When I got there, I told him what I wanted to. I said, I just want to sit. I just want to find somewhere I can sit. So he gave me this keys, and he directed me to this kuti, this hut at the back of the meditation room, of the monastery. And when I got there, there's this beautiful little 10-foot by 6-foot hut with a little chankama, a walking area with walls, keep the snakes out and all that, and a garden, all to myself. And I walked in there and I thought, this is absolutely marvellous. So I had a toilet built, that was important. And then there came that day, which was, it's very, it's rare, even in a sense, even in the monastic life, where you didn't have to go into retreat with the idea that you're going to finish in a month, 3 months, 4 months. I went in with no ending date. And so I sat there going through all this purification of the heart, doing my meditation, 2 o'clock till 10 o'clock at night, really going for it. I was absolutely empowered for doing it. And it was during that time my second trauma appeared out of the blue. I had this dream of looking across a pond, and there was a ghost waving at me. Now this ghost was exactly how you expect a ghost, a big sheep with 2 eyes, right? And it was out on the other side of the pond, and I was absolutely terrified. And I asked a Jungian psychologist about this. He said it was a birth trauma. I don't know. And then one night, the dream came once, it came twice, this nightmare. And then one night I woke up and there it was in the corner of the room. And I remember bouncing on the bed in absolute terror, saying, and then my little voice saying, what do you want? Hey, what do you want? And the thing just disappeared, it just fizzled out. And that was it. Something just came out of the heart, this trauma. I don't know what the heck, I still don't know what it means. And then after that, the clarity of impermanence became even more obvious to me. And it was so fortunate. Death is not particularly doesn't particularly regard you. Death happens when it wants to do it. It's usually most inconvenient. So at that point, just when everything was finished, my father died. So I remember receiving the news, and I was walking back towards the kuti, and I'm crying. But I didn't cry long, because when I reflected on his life, he had a good life. He was a happy man. He was very sanguine, etc., etc. And I loved him much. And I went back for his funeral. And then I thought, well, somebody has to stay with my mother, comfort my mother. So I stayed with my mother for a year, and I was a real Job's comforter. Yeah, I mean, I think I caused her more misery. So, death stirs things up, Death stirs things. I mean, if there's one woman I love to bits, it's my mother, and I could strangle her. It's one of those things, And so I stayed with her for 1 year, and then I came back, and I said to the family, I don't think she's going to live long, because she doesn't have the moral support. Anyway, what happened was I went back with the fierce intention again to start, and off I went. And come about, it wasn't very long, something like that, she went seriously ill. And so I came back, and I felt really bad about that year of comforting. And so I really made an effort this time. And you couldn't live with my mother, it's impossible. So we got her into a lovely nursing home. And at first she hated it. She talked about le carrozze, these wheelchairs. She couldn't stand the wheelchairs. But when I went to see her after about a month, she was perfectly at home. She was back in boarding school. She was with all these friends, all these women. She was chatting away. She was the life of the party. It was absolutely wonderful to see it. Anyway, again, most convenient. she decided to have a stroke just before I was off to Sri Lanka, and she died within 3 days. So having buried her, I then went back to Sri Lanka and started the process again. So the shock of the death of my mother was really weird. I felt like an orphan. I mean, I was 45 years old, and I felt as though, I felt like an orphan. It was, I wrote this big long letter to one of my cousins in Italy explaining how awful I felt. I don't know what he's done with it. So, and that passed, and then I went back and really went for it again. And there came this point where, it was just impossible. The restlessness, the pain that was coming out of me was just constant. It was day in. I woke up into it. I carried it through the day. I slept into it. I woke up and it just went on day after day. And it got to a point when I thought, no, I just can't go on. I can't go on. I'm going to stop. Well, I can't tell you what happened then. When I gave up at that moment, there came into me this enormous terror, which picked me up and threw me back onto the meditation cushion, right? Because that's the last thing you do. You can stop for a while, you can leave it, you can get drunk, you can do anything, but you never give up, right? Once you're on the path, you move on the path. If you give up, there's only one way to go, right? You're going to go down. And I was horrified. I can't tell you the horror that struck me when I realized that I'd actually given up on my spiritual journey. So I got over that pretty quickly. I just sat on the cushion and mowed my way through it. So then I'm getting, my body is beginning to suffer, I think. I don't know, I'm beginning to feel weak, I'm not strong. I write to a monk I know in London, who's Dr. Vajrayana, and I write with the intention of staying there just to get my body right. So I turn up at the London Buddhist Vihara, and I've got this back room, and I'm basically meditating. And the monk who was teaching there decided to leave the order and get married. So who did they ask to sit on the podium? It's me. So I'm sitting there, and I'm slowly becoming to understand that whatever took me to Sri Lanka, that energy, that inspiration was dying away. I didn't want to go back there. How would I live in Britain? So the only way you can live in Britain, if you want to find somewhere spiritually supportive, was to begin to teach. I needed support, okay? So that's where the teaching began. But of course I had this horror of teaching. I really didn't want to do it, okay? So I'm teaching weekend retreats, and come the year 2000, I decide, look, I've got to sort this out, and I go on a retreat with U Pandita, outside U Pandita's place, Pandita Rama, in the middle of Rangoon. And when you go on retreat with a problem, you don't think about the problem, you just go on retreat. And whatever is causing the problem will in fact just sort itself out. In other words, what's causing the problem is confusion. That's what's normally the problem. And if you just sit with it, if you just stay with it, as confusion, as fear of making a decision, eventually it just sorts itself out. So that was another rotten retreat. It was 6 weeks of misery. And then when it passed, and then when it passed, it was lovely and peaceful for a week. So I'm down at the end of the retreat, and I'm in the hall there, and I'm looking at the bookcase, and my eye falls on this book. And it's all the stuff on teaching that's taken out of A Course of Miracles. Some of you might know that book, Course of Miracles. It's a big book, and it's got a teacher's book with it. And I pick it out, and I'm reading it, and by the end of that book, I'm absolutely certain that what I've got to do is teach. Isn't that weird? It happens, doesn't it? You've got this problem, and you call for help, and the answer comes. It comes in its own time. So I get back to Britain, and I go back to the Vihara, and I set up a little trust, and before we know it, we've collected £25,000 to open a centre, and that's where the big mistake comes. I open up in the north of London. All my support is in the south. Right? I completely forget that London is not a city, it's a collection of villages, right? And you don't go from the south to the north for an evening meeting, right? That's a 2-hour journey. So on the opening day, 30 odd people came. And what happened was, they never came again. And I had this, they never came again, that's it. And come September, Matesh, a Dutch student, he was a student at the one of the London universities. doing a PhD, and he's very good. He supported me all the way. He's a lovely man. And I said to him, you know, if we don't have somebody by the end of September, we're not going to have a group. So we advertised all over the place, made these little stickers, and I had 2 young fellas, and they cycled everywhere, and they put these stickers everywhere, laundrettes, libraries, and everywhere, right? And it had the wrong telephone number. Yeah, you learn, huh? You learn. So the first night, the neighbour came, and he never came again. Okay. The second night, nobody came. All right. So by October, I'm thinking this is a disaster. Okay. By you know, the end of that season, the Sri Lankans had come to help us, especially Sita. She was always there helping me, Sita Siriwardene, Dr. Sita Siriwardene. And then we had this 6-week retreat over winter. We closed the place down. There were 5 of us, and I decided that it was not going to work. I've got to get out. Luckily, there was a man who was on retreat with me, Peter, who knew the bachelors, and he got in touch with the bachelors. That's Stephen and Martine. Some of you might have read their books and might know them. And he told them that the next cosmic Buddha was in the north of London. So they came up to see me, and it was just one of these lovely, oh my goodness, I'm really going over the top now. It's 3:15. I'm rushing now. I'm rushing through, right? Where do I need to get to? So anyway, this is it. This is the last bit. So. It was just one of those times when Gaia House was stuck. The bachelors had moved to France. They needed somebody there to look after the personals, about 12 personals throughout the retreat. So I went to see Christina Fellman, and I thought it was a great place. And when I was there, it became really my Dharma teacher centre, college, because not only was I treating with people who had come on personal retreat. Some of them were ill with ME and things like that. Some were, you know, psychological problems, not mental illnesses, but you know, passing depressions and all that sort of stuff. I had to deal with some of the managers who were running the place, and I was given the chance to run these 8-week retreats in the Mahasi system twice a year. And it was during that time that I realised that there was a little space to start something like this. So after about a year or 2, I decided to leave. I was never really fully into the teachers' organisation there, because it's a very lay organisation. And so again, I came to a choice as to whether to disrobe and become a lay teacher or to remain a monk. It was a bit like, for those of you who know the imagery, a bit like being a Catholic priest amongst Quakers. So I gave up. I decided to leave. And then we just went through the whole business of a trust. I have a special thanks to Anne Ashton, who was the treasurer, who was the accounts person at Gaia House, and she took us through this whole process of a lawyer. We got a lawyer from down in London, you know, a simple letter to the charitable trust, and we had it, you know, and it only cost us £2,500. And then we set it up, and well, then it's just history, isn't it? You know, I find this place, and from then on, I think you know what it's all about. Mm-hmm. So let me see now. Let me see. I have to finish now. This is the coda. This is finally the coda. Noreen's really rushed me. I could have been here 3 hours. So first, here we go. Right. Okay. So you might ask now, after all this, see, like where am I? You know, everybody wants to know where you are. So the Buddha gives this image of an ocean in which beings are swimming underneath, completely lost. Others bob their head up and down, and some are stable, and they can see there's an island which is both in but not of this world. Now, for me, it wasn't an ocean. It's been a swamp. Okay, so I'm stuck in this swamp with crocodiles, and every so often there's a bit of a clearing, and that's it. And all I can say is that I know where the island is. That's the important thing. I know where the island is. Does that mean I'm making a beeline for it? Not at all. I slip over here, slip over. I sometimes turn my back on it, but generally speaking, I'm on the way, right? So that's where you've got to get to. So you can see how I just stumbled and bumbled and just blundered my way through life, but not without lots of summery somersaults and sticky toffee pudding with custard. So it's, and I've landed here in an area of outstanding natural beauty. It's not bad, is it? Anyway, So now, there were two things. I wanted to talk about some of my spiritual experience because I want to really release people from keeping it to themselves. Often, I get meditators come to me and tell me similar things that I've told you, and I've said, well, have you told anybody? He said, no, it's only just for me. Because there isn't that framework within which they feel free to express themselves. And often, of course, if they can't, they get into what's known as a spiritual emergency, where it just sends them offline, and they end up with a doctor. And if the doctor's not sympathetic, of course, you're back on drugs. You're a psychotic interlude or something. So, be much more open about out-of-body experiences. I go to Gaia, and occasionally I'll ask a group of 25, how many people have had out-of-body experiences? 5 hands go up. Now, I wouldn't say that's the same percentage for the general population, but it's not an unknown experience, And so finally, what is it that I would really like to really like to pass on to you? What is it I've come to know? I've come to realize that the difference between me and the Buddha is one of degree and not of kind. And that the difference between me and you is the same. And that the difference between us and all sentient beings, all these animals, if you look into their eyes, the mirrors, the windows to the soul, you'll see they have this intelligence. And that because of that, the force that lies in us all is to seek happiness. Right? And because we're deluded, we create all this suffering. But at some point, there has to be a turning, right? A turning. You turn round upon it, and at some point in your life, you're pushed by your own suffering to move towards the end of it. Now, Kant has this little phrase called a categorical imperative, and he's talking about the model law, whereby, if I can just quote him here, if I can just find it just a minute. I can find it somewhere. I thought I'd written it down. Oh, what a shame. It's the definition of it, you see. A categorical imperative, by which he means that if you make a moral law, like for instance, not to steal, that is unconditionally and completely applicable to all human beings. Right? That's in the category of stealing, it is an imperative, a command that all human beings obey that. You can't say one human being can steal and others can't. Okay? So I would like to say that it is a categorical imperative that all beings, all sentient beings, will become fully liberated from all suffering forever. Absolutely. I can only hope my words have been of some assistance, that they have not caused confusion and befuddlement, and that you will, by your devotion to the practice, unremitting devotion to the practice, come to the end of suffering forever, sooner rather than later. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Oh, I was rushed. I could have gone on. Sorry about that. Oh, yes, folks, it's coming through, is it? No. What happens now, Noreen?
Skype.
Skype?
Yeah.
Okay.
Do you want to turn the screen on?
Mary, say happy birthday, Bante.
Oh, thank you very much.
That's Mary's.
Yeah,
We were
Mary.
talking earlier about and these are a few of them.
Can't get it. Can't get it. Can't quite get it.
Okay. We were talking earlier about things that we're thankful to you for. Thankful to you and those that find you. And these are a few of them.
Oh.
We're thankful for your sense of humour because it's got a hard time. We thank you for teaching us a way to listen our relationships pain.
Can't quite hear.
And God just said, when I hear the word refuge, I think of Satipanya. It's my spiritual home.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Sadhu.
You say sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Sadhu.
Thank you. Should we turn it?
Huh?
Should we turn?
The screen round.
Yeah.
Well, you've got to see it too, you see. It's me, I'm sitting too far back, really.
We're probably going to try to get the next further off now. So we have a few moments. Did you ever find a kind of equivalent between your love of Saint God and Jesus and how you integrated that into Buddhism?
Well, I had a struggle with, I had to make sense of Jesus, there's no doubt about that, because it was just so deeply buried in my heart. And I struggled with that for a very long time. And I had to come to some sort of understanding. And I used to go, while I was in Sri Lanka, to see a friend who was a Hindu, but he had been a Catholic. And it was funny, he kept talking about imagery, kept talking about metaphor. And I just wasn't getting it, because in Theravada everything is so scientific, it's so one of these, 10 of those. Like there's not much theatre, there's not much poetry in Theravada as such. And it just came upon me just all of a sudden while I'm struggling with, the essential mystery of the body and the wine. Like what's he trying to get across with that? And this is of course my own interpretation, that when he talks about this is my body and this is my blood, most people think of that he's talking about Jesus. He's talking about the body. He's talking about, in fact, even in the scriptures there, he says that to some people and they're disgusted with him. I'm not, it's like cannibalism. But if you think about the Christ within, if you think about the Buddha, then ask yourself, what is the base of our Buddha nature? What's its platform? It's awareness, isn't it? Sati. What vivifies it? It's that intuitive grasp of things. So it's two sides of the same coin, the bread and wine, the awareness, and this intuitive grasp of things. And that's what I think, and that's what I, understood his teachings to be about. And when I told this to the last Archbishop of Canterbury, he said, very interesting. Rowan Williams, yeah, very interesting, he said. So once that was sorted, it sort of, it made sense to me what he was trying to do, because I think, frankly, he was trying to lift the Jews out of monotheism into something beyond that. In the same way that Hinduism moves from Vishnu, Brahma, and who's the other fella? Vishnu, Brahma, and don't you know, for heaven's sake? Trying to lift them out to Brahman. So it's moving into that non-personal, non-dualistic level. And now you'll find teachers in Christianity that are teaching exactly that. Cynthia Bourgeot, Professor Cynthia Bourgeot. You get her tapes, and they're teaching Jesus as they're calling him the wisdom Jesus, and they're teaching him as a non-dualist teacher. Now what happened, of course, was that Paul began to teach it to the empire. Where were the empire? They were in what do they call it before monotheism? God, see, my brain's going now. Polytheistic, right? A polytheistic religion isn't about morality; it's about power. You need the gods to do what they were supposed to do, so you offer them, sacrifices and all that sort of stuff. The shift towards monotheism, was a complete shift, and it all happened 2,500 years ago, with the Buddha, with what was happening in the Upanishads, with Lao Tzu, with Socrates, and with Moses. That was the huge shift in human consciousness. But the Buddha sort of went just one step beyond. Because there's no God, there's no personal God in Buddhism. So he's already there at the pinnacle of non-dualism. And Shankaracharya, I read a book called The Critical History of Indian philosophy. And according to this philosopher, Shankaracharya, the great teacher of Hinduism, actually took everything from Buddhism and made it into Hinduism and turned it into a non-dualistic religion. That's how I struggle with it.
Ah.
The monsters from Brighton.
Birthday, Nancy.
Happy birthday, Nancy.
Nancy, you're the same age as Donald Trump.
What, you want me to commit suicide?
Bante, if Samuel Beckett had ever written a Buddhist play, it would be the story of your life. Thank you for a wonderful Dharma talk. It was great.
Thank you. I was rushed. Noreen rushed me.
We listened all afternoon to that.
Sorry? Say that again.
We could have listened all afternoon.
Yes, well, I was ready for all day, actually.
So in the People's Republic of Brighton, Bante, to do the democratic approach, rather than have a person, you've got all of us just sitting here.
Did you get that? Rather than...
Kind of.
Rather than a spokesperson, yes, that's right, yeah.
So we were thinking, well, I think each of us were thinking earlier about what comes to mind when we think of you coming and teaching in Brighton. For me, despite all, of course, all the wonderful teachings at the great day retreats and Ship Street Gardens, the Dharma School, but the thing that always comes to mind for me is trying to find new and unusual places for a siesta after lunch.
Well, it's necessary. I can't hear.
Gone quiet.
We've lost you.
And then more recently, it's been in a paper mache castle in the nursery room at the Dharma School, surrounded by cuddly toys.
Happy birthday to Sarah as well.
Oh,
Yeah, we lost
I don't know if you can hear us. Okay.
There she is.
It comes and goes. You're going ta-da.
See ya.
Ta-da.
Bye. Bye.
Yeah, we're ashamed.
Are they seeing this? As
Yeah,
well?
they're seeing us, yeah.
And all the pictures they're
I
seeing.
think, oh yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
that's good.
Oh yeah.
Mm.
Supposed to be.
Yeah.
So anyway, if you had it all over again, would you do anything differently?
Well, I wouldn't do it again. I mean, it's been worthwhile. It's been worth the life, but I don't want to do it again under any circumstance. I mean, what I'm hoping is that I come back, if I have to come back, with a bit more wisdom. I don't fall into these great big catastrophes.
So would you book 3 hours for this talk?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, we talk about the Buddha's great, the great enunciation, the great deliberation, the great determination. Well, the only thing I ever did was the great black hole. I was trying to get out of it. But it was, to me it was a miracle coming across the teaching. It just lifted me out so quickly, and grounded me.
Can you remember what was that you read in that book about teaching that really changed your attitude towards it?
Oh no, I can't remember at all. But all I knew was that after I'd finished the book and I've been trying to find it, but it's not there. I'm going back to Burma, and I'll probably visit that monastery and see if I can find it. But it was it's a strange thing, isn't it? That books find you, people find you. You know, it's weird, isn't it?
What was the title of that book again?
I think it was just like, you know, teaching. Something like that. Well, it was the Course in Miracles, teaching, you know, the need for teachers, something like that. It's only a thin little book. Somebody had published this little collection. It was really weird. But I think it's surprising how all you've got to do is ask, isn't it? Ask and the door should be open. Knock, all that stuff, you know.
Yeah.
When do you go to Japan? You said about Dogen was one of your draws. Could you say any more about that?
Well, it's only because of that connection with Throssell. And I've always wanted to visit the the original monastery, because that's where Roshi Kennett, you know, if you want to read a biography of somebody living in a Zen monastery, training in a Zen monastery, read the biography of Roshi Kennett. She was there for about, I don't know, 3 or 4 years, I think. I think I'm right. Did anybody else read it? No. And I mean, it's a story of a half, because she's the only woman, you know, and she's coming across all these very male males, and she's trained, yeah. So I wanted to visit that just as really as a Thanksgiving, you know, to go to a place, and it had such an effect on me. Yeah. I'm taking Carl. Yeah.
So when are you actually going?
April 2nd for about 3 weeks.
Great.
I wanted to ask cheekily, when you saw this glowing tree, it wasn't your mate Dave's that you were just in and are you still in contact with him?
No, actually, I skipped over this, but I had 2 fears. I had 2 hypochondriacal fears. The first was going mad. From about the age of 13, 14, I always felt I was going to go mad. And that left me with that out-of-body experience. The other one was paralysis. And I went through this peculiar moment when, as I joined the order, my body was flinging itself all over the place. I once woke up in the middle of the night with my body just, it's coming on.
And when you're ready, go. That shouldn't have happened.
Oh, hello.
Hi.
Yay. Look how many people. I know. That's Dublin. That's Dublin, yeah.
There's Margaret.
Yes, that's Margaret.
Happy birthday,
Birthday.
You're slightly off screen at that point.
Is that,
Yeah,
is that Catherine?
You need to try and get in the middle, screen the
Turn it.
I don't think that will change the lens.
Can we just get the other hand?
Oh, that's
No, it doesn't change the lens.
That's it, better, yeah.
It is. I didn't think it would do that. Sorry about this.
That's Eugene, isn't it? You'll get there,
There we
Eugene.
go.
I believe in
Thumbs
you.
up.
I believe in you, Eugene.
Okay. There we go.
Very good. Oh, wonderful. Wonderful to see you all.
So you got to speak up.
Bhante, just to wish you a happy birthday, and I was thinking that from what you said just now, that you were in your not wanting to teach phase when you came here almost 30 years ago today to teach that retreat in Tala. And for me, it was a huge turning point. So it was one of my blessings. So thank you.
Thank you. Is that it?
But it was the almost 40 years to the day.
Yeah, close to it, yeah. Can you hear us okay? Is the sound okay?
Yeah. Yeah, we can hear you.
But we missed that last bit.
Yeah, there's a lovely silence.
Okay. This is Jimmy here. I was also at that retreat, and I can remember quite well. And I just want to say that even though I've never been to Satipanga, I still hold you as my teacher, and I hope you don't take any umbrage at me not turning up. I want to say as well, seriously, that the talk that you've given is such a real talk about a real person, and not somebody stuck in kind of high pollution kind of philosophy or something. And it makes such a difference that you can mix both. You can mix both of them so well. And it's a joy to have you as a teacher. I want to put big emphasis on the word joy. Grateful in the midst of all the confusion and despair. So thanks very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, and Bante, I sort of paralleled you a little bit in going to Throstle Hole as my first point of call for Buddhist teaching. I think I was possibly a few years behind you. But I was struggling with their approach, which I found rather rigid and overly dogmatic and controlling. So it was great relief for me when I did the retreat with you and Ruwata Dhamma in '87 in Birmingham. It was quite a turning point for me. And it was a big turning point for our group when you came to Dublin the following year and moved in the sort of more Theravadan way than the Zen way. So thank you for your teaching over the years.
And I want to say that hearing the story about your oven cigarettes was so relieving. On the first weekend I did with you, we didn't know the rules. We didn't know we couldn't eat. So we rubbed bananas in the kitchen. I never told you that. I'm getting it off my chest.
Absolutely.
So we just birthday again, and I think it's gone. And I just want to wish you happy birthday from all of us, and look forward to teachings in the future. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Take care. Thank you.
Bye. Bye.
Where was I before that interruption? It's gone.
You were talking about the woman who was had gone to a monastery where she was the only woman.
Oh yeah, that's Roshi Kennett. Yeah, but I don't know what in context. She's part of being 70. Can't remember a thing. It's great. Every moment is new. Who are you again?
What your hopes are for the next 10 years?
Sorry?
What are your hopes for the next 10 years?
That I continue to live. I think I need a bit more time to... I mean, what I would like is a halo of teachers. Do you like that? A halo of teachers to be established here. 7 or 8 of them. So that the place just has that background of good teachers, you see. At the moment we have 3. So there's Carl, Aya and Hus. Put your hand up, Hus, please. They're probably going, yeah, there we are, you see. So he comes and does the retreat. So it'd be nice to have that, you see. And hopefully to find a way to run this place which doesn't depend on me. That's my target for the next 5 years. And then I'll disappear. Yeah, that would be my hope anyway. Go on.
I was going to say disappear in what respect? As in go somewhere?
No,
else,
just no. I don't think I'll only disappear when it's time to go.
I'm wondering about you talked before about Gaia House and the dilemma of becoming a layperson and disrobing, and it's quite well, I suppose we think of monks within a group, and you've chosen to be on your own. And I just wonder about your commitment to being in robes and to sticking with the monastic order despite, but not being with other people.
Yeah. No, it's true. Lone monks are known. You don't, you will get monks who are quite happy to be on their own. It's not a choice. It's just the way I've ended up. There are no Western monks that I was involved with in Sri Lanka who could have come over with me. There just weren't any. That's the end of it. So I was basically on my own from the beginning, you see. It would have been nice to have had a partner or somebody to run the place, somebody whom you're compatible with. You have to remember that just because you're a monk doesn't mean you like the person. You know what I mean? It's like, it's a varied community. But there have been many times throughout the 30 years, this is my 30th year, where, I've wanted to leave. I mean, there was one point where I was going to bed saying, right, tomorrow that's it, we'll get out, we'll do something useful. And I'd wake up in the morning and I'd say, well, God, I'll give you just one more day. And in the end, I just had to laugh. Now, every time I came to this point of wanting to leave, I couldn't think of anything at all in society that attracted me. I went through the whole job, and I usually ended up with a fantasy of stacking shelves and going back to the garret and doing my meditation. So I said, well, I can do that without stacking shelves. So I never left. Every time that, there were times when I was very close. One of them was at the end of that escapade up in North London. I mean, that was an obvious time where, I didn't know where to go. I was nowhere, but there was nothing I just ended up faffing about.
And what about the robes, What about the actual
robes?
Yeah,
well, I'm stuck with the colour. I'd love to wear blue. It'd be great, pink. I'd love to wear pink. See, look, pink. Pink like. What do you mean by the robes?
Well, I suppose why not just become a lay person teacher?
Oh, I see. Oh, very good.
Hello, greetings from Westbury.
Hooray! Very good. How are you? Very good.
We have one teenager here in pajamas, Bante. Is that okay? She appears, Alicia.
She's wearing pajamas. Yes, that's all right.
Pajamas, to give you birthday greetings.
Oh, very good.
We wanted to show you the birthday cake that we will be celebrating your birthday with, and
fancy.
Very soon. So we're just bring it a little bit closer. Yeah.
Don't slide it on.
We'll be eating your words very soon, Bante. So, the cards that we sent based on some of the memories that we had visiting, I just wanted to share one little story that we still find amusing, and it was the time that we climbed up Mount. And for those of you who don't know where it is, it's a mountain of spiritual significance here in West Kerry, named after St. Brendan the Navigator, who went to from these shores to America. So a few years ago, we hiked up it with Bante, right at the top where there's a beautiful Catholic cross and an inscription and a little cairn of stones. So Bante decided that at the top of the mountain on a clear blue sky day, very calm, that he would chant. So he sat in the little cairn and he began his chant, his Pali chant, which we joined in, and then suddenly this wind whipped up, started blowing around us at the top of the mountain, and Bante put up his hands and he said, "The wrath of St. Brendan is upon you." So that's one of the memories we have from one of your visits here to us, Bante.
Thank you.
Anything else to say? anything or ask anything.
Bandy, John here, just to wish you a happy birthday.
Thank you.
And to remind you that your first 10-day retreat, you performed in Canterbury in the Broadview Hostel over 20 years ago. So you've gone from strength to strength, and we thank you for your inspiration.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Keep the cake. I'm coming.
If we could keep you a piece, we would, but
I
we'll
want-
send you photos of it. We're just gonna light the candles now and sing you out from West Kerry.
Hooray! Thank you very much. Yeah.
You know,
Lisa,
do you know it?
Yeah.
Come on, we're going to sing it in Irish, Fanti. Happy
Okay.
birthday to you in Irish. You've had it in Pali and you're getting the Gaelic version now. Yeah. La breha hanadich, la breha hanadich, la breha, la breha, la breha hanadich.
Hooray! Thank you very much. I'll eat the head.
Banty, what's your funniest teaching experience?
Funniest teaching experience? Can't think of any. Funniest, what do you mean by that? Funniest teaching
Well,
experience?
there's oh, actually, you've got a question to answer as well. But yeah, when you answer a question.
That was about the robes.
Yeah.
See, I remembered. The robes. Why don't I? Oh, I see. Well, the robes are a guardian, really, because you know you have to behave in a certain way when you walk around in robes. But it's just you just get used to it. It's just I haven't even thought about that really.
The question was about, you know, other than that, you know, have you thought about being a Dharma teacher, but as a layperson?
Oh yeah, that's what I thought. Yeah, but it doesn't attract me because Dharma teachers they get support, but remember they've got massive overheads. Sometimes they have you know, children, they have cars to run, all that sort of stuff. Being a monk really releases me from all that sort of baggage. Shouldn't call it baggage really. Should call it delight. And that releases me from the delight of ordinary life. So that my, you know, once I've got my laptop and stuff like that, that's it. If I left, it would, oh, I don't know. It just doesn't attract me. I mean, I'm conditioned now. It takes such a long time to recondition yourself. You know, I just feel comfortable in the robes. It's as simple as that. And I haven't got long to go anyway. What's the point of? Oh, hello, Mike. Our building consultant, upon whom we are dependent.
Hi. Hi, Bandy.
Hi.
Well, happy birthday.
Thank you.
I'm getting distracted here. I've got two things going on at once. There seems to be a delay on the... Hi, Bandy, can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Well, happy birthday.
Thank you.
And thank you so much for all the teachings you gave me over the years that we've been building together. There was one incident that actually typifies you, which you probably actually forgot. But we were away in Suffolk, and we went to a church. And whilst we were wandering around, the verger came out and gave us a guided tour. And there was a chap came into the church who was distressed. Didn't have any money to get home, was obviously in an incredibly bad way. And before the verger could actually say anything, you'd put your hand in your pocket and gave the guy £5. And the verger was so blown away. It was just, he couldn't believe your generosity and your instant kindness. And that's a memory that sticks with me when I think of you most of the time.
Thank you very much, Mike.
It was a very generous moment, and it just typified your embodying loving kindness. Really a nice moment.
Yeah, that was a good moment I had.
Well, we all love them sometimes.
That's it. Exactly that.
Yeah.
Take care.
Well, I hope there's another 70 years worth of Bante's influence, if not presence, in South Banyan. Certainly the building will last another 70 years. That's
yes. I'll see you Thursday.
Yes.
He's coming up to check it out. A funny teaching moment, I can't think. Pam.
This is sort of related to that. I've known you for a really long time, 40 years probably.
Yes.
And you always were really, really, really funny, and I think you're still really funny, and so do lots of people. Really appreciate your sense of humour. How important do you think a sense of humour is in the spiritual life? Not just yours, but everybody's spiritual life. Do you think that the sense of humour has a place?
Well, definitely, it's catching the irony, isn't it? It's catching the paradox, seeing the paradox. Okay. Remember, in Zen Buddhism, once you break through the delusion, there's this great guffaw, this great laugh that it's all been this stupid mistake. Now you've messed up. Ooh, hello, Ricardo, come in. Is that over now? Is it?
Yeah.
Ah, that's it.
Actually, let's go.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. So yes, how are we doing for time? Tea time, is it?
No, there's stuff to do yet.
Oh, so yes, humour.
So Bante, I'd like to take this opportunity
yes.
To present you with a cheque.
Oh my goodness.
Quite a large cheque.
Yes.
This is donations, as you know, from all of the Sangha. A very generous offer has been made to round up what was donated.
Fantastic.
To give us this figure of £7,070 and 70 pence.
My goodness, look at that.
70, 70, 70.
That's not bad, is it? 70, 70, 70. Yeah, I'm particularly relieved because it means I can get a return ticket. That's wonderful, thank you.
Spelled wrong name wrong.
Bodhidharma. No, it's not. No, it's not. Hey? Bodhidharma. No, it's not.
No, I'm joking.
Oh, you're joking. Kill that man.
Nori's asking me also to remind us that we've got other groups sitting around the world. We don't know exactly how many people have been tuning into the broadcast, but we will find out. But there's Ursula in Liverpool, the group there.
That's right.
Sandra and Gianni are in Italy, who are on retreat at the moment, but they send us good wishes in spirit. And Michelle in Switzerland, and the group there. And Marina at Terre de Ville in France.
Ah, Marina. There we are. Thank you.
Over to...
Ooh. Oh, look at that. Thank you, Zoe.
So we wanted to present you this little Parinibbana Buddha as a symbol of the big Parinibbana Buddha that unfortunately couldn't get here in time for your birthday.
No.
So and Richard's son Simon bought it in Sri Lanka.
Did he?
Yeah.
Oh, right.
So
He's happy, isn't he?
He posted it.
He's very happy, look.
He chose one.
Yeah.
You get a crick in the neck if you stay like that. Thank you very much. I'll put that here. Thank you.
Okay. And we also wanted to give you this little book.
Basho's Travel, yeah.
Yeah, for you to read on your pilgrimage.
Fantastic.
So, yeah, it's the 17th century haiku poet's account of his own pilgrimage in Japan.
Yeah.
Apparently, he also wanted to go all his life on a pilgrimage and managed to get round to it later in life. So yeah.
That's lovely, thank you.
Sadhu.
Sadhu.
Sadhu. Sadhu.
Oh my goodness, more.
I'm not sure. I don't think that this is working, teacher. No, is it? Right, just hold on one moment. Talk among yourselves all along. That sounds a bit like me. So, Andy, I was glad to see you got at least one birthday card through the post, because otherwise, yeah, you might have been a little bit disappointed that we've forgotten you. But what happened was, we asked everyone to send their birthday cards to Dea and Richard, who then bound them
Oh
up
my goodness, look.
into that lovely book. Yeah, that's right. So, what we asked people to do was to maybe find a photo or a quotation or something that represented however you had touched their lives over these past years. And I think you will find that there are really very beautiful expressions of gratitude and appreciation there, and friendship, and also some attempts to illustrate the Dhamma, which might give you a little bit of a fright. Who knows? Who knows what? But so your great gift to us has been to really bring the Dhamma alive in your teachings and your interactions, so that we thought for your birthday you might like to just take a back seat and let what you have given out to us over the years be reflected back. And also, anyway, we really enjoyed approaching the Dhamma this way, trying to find pictures that would illustrate things like dukkha and anatta and so on. So, if you can enjoy reading through it as much as we enjoyed putting it together, we will be very happy.
Thank you very much. That's lovely.
Sadhu, sadhu.
And Bante, if you thought that looked like quite a few cards,
Oh my goodness.
we've got a few more here for you. This is another book that we put together in a portrait format.
Oh, that's lovely.
And in this box here are some more cards and a scroll from Sister Ruth.
Oh, Sister Ruth.
And I think you'll find that that's obviously from the group who made the cake.
It looks like.
Yeah, I know.
Who does it look like?
Simpsons.
Simpsons, yes. Thank you so much. It's a lovely box too.
So that's stop a bit there.
It does, doesn't it?
Yeah.
That's disgusting. Thank you so much. It's been a joy. Oh heavens, more.
Happy birthday, Bante.
Thank you, Pam.
Very important person in my life. when we were young and carefree.
Yes, in those happy days.
In Birmingham. And I wasn't going to say anything, but it's written, so I think I'll just read what
Right.
So these two pictures, you'll see what they are. You know what they are because you said they were okay.
Yes.
For Satipanya. So the story is that we were travelling around Malaysia and went to a Buddhist centre, I think it was in Malacca, and explained Satipanya. And the very nice woman there, the nun, said, you must have these two pictures on very thin rice paper. Now, we were going around Malaysia with small backpacks, 2 weeks, New Zealand 5 weeks, Cambodia, Bangkok. So these pictures
have been around the world.
Have been around the world. Eventually got them back home to Stroud, brought them to you to see if you'd like them for your birthday, and you said yes. So they went back to Stroud to be framed, and now they're here.
Yeah. Oh.
So with lots of love from me, Paul, and Jack and Rosie.
Fantastic, thank you. Can I open it?
Yeah, you certainly can.
There we are. Right, okay, well, let's see what we can do here. The suspense.
This is a practice in patience.
And you're the only other person I know that opens presents the way I do, and I drive everybody insane.
Right.
They want me to rip all the pages off, and I pull all the bits apart.
Oh, no, you
I can
can't.
say it's a Manchester tradition.
Yeah, you can. It must be. Yeah, you can't just rip it off, can you? Not that they've spent so much time putting it together. I think I can slip it out actually from there. To Hold on. There we go. Slowly. Hey, are they beautiful?
I can't believe that we travelled round with them. We travel like small day packs for 12 weeks. And we actually managed to get them here without any tears.
Beautiful.
Thank you so much.
Pleasure.
Oh my goodness. Fantastic. Fantastic, thank you so much.
That's it now.
That's it, great. That's it, cup of tea now, is it?
I've just got to say something, divert the attention away from you, Bente, for just 1 minute. And just say something on behalf of the Satipanya trustees, which is to mark and thank everybody for the fantastic effort that's gone into this day and how it's worked so well. Firstly, I'd like to thank Charles and Heather, Pete and Mark, who are here today. Thank you very much, it's been fantastic. And I also understand that Paul could have been here, but he isn't. He's unwell, and just to send our best wishes to him and thanks to him as well. And then to thank you, of course, thank the Satipanya Sangha, which has been fantastic today. It couldn't have worked without you, and thank you very much. And then to say that behind every great effort and event, there's always a committee. And we had the birthday celebration committee, I think they call it. Satipanya Celebration Committee. And I'd particularly just like to thank Aya, thank Noreen, Sarah, Dea, and Richard, and Mark the voice. And thank you very much and for all your help, and well done. Thank you.
And for anybody out there in the world who hasn't made a donation yet, the lines are still open until midnight tonight. So get on PayPal.
So, can we say that people who stay behind can have a piece of my cake?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah? I'm not supposed to eat it by myself.
Doesn't it look lovely?
It's fantastic. Oh my goodness.
Gwen made the cake.
Oh yeah.
Gwen made the cake. Oh,
That's what you call a fruit cake.
that's what that is, a fruit cake. Very good.
Patty, do you want to tell people at home whether or not going to come back after New Year's when we say goodbye now?
I didn't feel people had any further questions or anything. So
All right.
I think we've done, haven't we?
Yeah. Right.
Any further questions can be emailed.
Answer them on your 80th birthday party.
Can I just there was a small sort of extra gift from the local Satipanya group, the Thursday night meeting. But I'm going to have to disappear in a minute.
Okay. And then come back.
No, and leave it outside. So actually, if we go for tea out,
It'll be there.
You might be able to see it.
Oh, very good.
Yeah.
Very good. Let's go for tea.
You always wanted a dog, didn't you?
Oh, I do not want a dog.
Sukham jata diva sete, Sukham jata diva sete, Sukham jata diva se peyabanti, Sukham jata diva sete, Sukham jata diva sete, Sukham jata diva sete, Sukham jata diva se peyabanti, Sukham jata diva sete.
This piece was written and arranged by Brian Lester as his gift to Bhante. That piece was written and arranged by Brian Lester as his gift to Bante. This piece, entitled Cradle of Gems, was composed and performed by Sister Karen Markham as her gift to Bante. So happy birthday, Banty, from Terre de Vale, the group in Paris. Infant Joy by William Blake. I have no name, I am but 2 days old. What shall I call thee? I happy am, Joy is my name. Sweet joy befall thee. Pretty joy, sweet joy, but 2 days old. Sweet joy I call thee. Thou dost smile, I sing the while. Sweet joy befall thee. For Banty, to thank you for setting the wheel of the Dharma in motion at Satipanya, here is your local group's illustration of the Four Noble Truths. First Noble Truth. The world is afflicted by death and decay, but the wise do not grieve, having realized the nature of the world. Second Noble Truth. Whoever is overcome by this wretched craving, his sorrows grow like grass after rain. But whoever overcomes this wretched craving, his sorrows fall away like water from a lotus leaf. Third Noble Truth. There is an end to suffering. There is an island which you cannot go beyond. It is a place of nothingness, of non-possession and non-attachment. It is the total end of death and decay, and this is why I call it Nibbana. Fourth Noble Truth. There is a path to the end of suffering. No one saves us but ourselves. No one can and no one may. We ourselves must walk the path. The following cards represent the Noble Eightfold Path. Avijjaya Tveva Sesa Viraga Nirodha Sankara Nirodho. With the entire cessation of this ignorance, intentional activities cease. Eva metasa kevalasa dukkha kandasa nirodhoti. Thus does the cessation of this entire aggregation of suffering result. O Master, is it proper for a monk to use email? Sure, as long as there are no attachments. I said to the wanting creature inside me, what is this river you want to cross? There are no travellers on the river road, and no road. Do you see anyone moving about on that bank, or nesting? There is no river at all, and no boat, and no boatman. There is no tow rope either, and no one to pull it. There is no ground, no sky, no time, no bank, no ford. And there is no body and no mind. Do you believe that there is some place that will make the soul less thirsty? In that great absence you will find nothing. Be strong then, and enter into your own body. There you have a solid place for your feet. Think about it carefully. Don't go off somewhere else. Kabir says this, just throw away all thoughts of imaginary things and stand firm in that which you are. For your 70th birthday, Banty, we thought we would update a verse from the Parinibbana Sutta. Come, Ananda, let us go to the Satipanya shrine. Beautiful, Ananda, is the Satipanya shrine. For hire, Messrs. Maurice Mole and Sons, purveyors of quality unwanted holes, full dissatisfaction guaranteed or your money back. No lawn too small to ruin. For a reminder of impermanence you could not find better. That's why all little moles should be wished metta. This is a card based on the Wheel of Dependent Origination from the Insight Meditation Group of Dublin, with apologies to dandelion lovers everywhere. Have mercy, Banty. Don't cut off my head. Listen to my tale of woe. It's called The Wheel of Dandelion Origination. Avijah. I never meant any harm. I don't know how it started. It was like a whirlwind. Everything was going round and round. Nothing made sense. Avijah, ignorance, is a condition for Sankara. Whirling in the torrent there was a seed of willpower. What I had previously desired and built my life around was written into that tiny seed. It could all happen again. Yippee! Sankara, habitual formations, are a condition for Vijnana. Now, where to plant that seed? Ah yes, the ground of discriminative consciousness. Where the seed was known as separate, with a past and a future, in that rich soil a seed could settle and flourish. Vijnana, consciousness, is a condition for Namarupa. No sooner had the seed settled than it began to germinate, dividing in two. One part attracted to the earth to be rooted, physical, grounded. The other attracted to the skies to explore the world, make contact. Namarupa, mentality, materiality, is a condition for Salayatana. 6 channels opened up. 6 doorways to the outer world. Now the internal world was ready and waiting for some external stimulus to open one channel. Salayatana, 6 sense spaces, are a condition for Phassa. A ray of sunlight opened up the doorway of the eye. Immediately the seedling burst through. Now its inner world was in contact with the outer world. Phassa, contact, is a condition for Vedana. The sunshine was so pleasant, lovely, nourishing, gorgeous. The stem grew leaves to soak it up. Maybe it would have been better to leave it at that. Just basking in the sunshine while it lasted. But then the trouble started. Vedana, feeling, is a condition for Tanha. Something deep down demanded more. More of the sunshine, more of the lovely stuff. It was like thirst, it just had to be satisfied. With a great surge of energy, a big stem started to shoot upwards, demanding more, more, more. Tanha, desire, is a condition for Upadana. Then I blossomed. I had found myself at last. Aren't I beautiful, marvellous, golden and gorgeous like the sun itself? Now all I had to do was hold on tight. Upadana, clinging, is a condition for Bhava, till, by sheer willpower, I put forth all these seeds to give the world more of me, millions and millions more, and so Bhava, becoming, is a condition for Jati. Behold ye, the Dandelion dynasty has been born. This poor old stupor hasn't a chance. Purify? No way. Let's dandify. Jati, birth, is a condition for Jaramarana. Ah no, how did this happen? And to me? Where is my dynasty now? My roots all shriveled, my gorgeous head now bald and bent, my leaves rotting, eaten by worms. Such pain, such agony. Jaramarana, aging, death, lamentation, despair.
Some friends from the Inside Meditation group in Dublin got together to illustrate the 6 sense spheres as their card for Bante's book. Each card was made by a different person, and as we're not all great artists, Don't expect consistency. The Buddha described the six sense spheres as the all. The Blessed One said, what is the all? Simply the eye and forms, ear and sounds, nose and aromas, tongue and flavours, body and sensations, intellect and ideas. This, monks, is called the all. Suppose the two oxen were joined by a yoke. If someone were to say, the ox on the left fetters the one on the right, would they be speaking rightly? No, my friend. Neither ox fetters the other. The yoke by which they are joined, that is the fetter. In the same way, neither does the eye fetter visible forms, nor do visible forms fetter the eye. Whatever desire and passion arises dependent on both, that is the fetter. In this illustration of the sense sphere of vision, we have the eyes of wisdom, and then below, in a lower realm, you could say, the eyes that have been blinded by what they desire. The sense sphere of the ear and sound is illustrated around a poem by Billy Collins titled Another Reason Why I Don't Keep a Gun in the House, with the Buddha and Kuan Yin lending their compassion and wisdom to the initially fraught situation. The neighbour's dog will not stop barking. He's barking the same high rhythmic bark that he barks every time they leave the house. They must switch him on their way out. The neighbour's dog will not stop barking. I close all the windows in the house and put on a Beethoven symphony full blast. But I can still hear him muffled under the music, barking, barking, barking. And now I can see him sitting in the orchestra, his head raised confidently, as if Beethoven had included a part for a barking dog. When the record finally ends, he's still barking, sitting there in the oboe section, barking. His eyes fixed on the conductor, who is entreating him with his baton, while the other musicians listen in respectful silence to the famous barking dog solo, that endless coda that first established Beethoven as an innovative genius. To illustrate the sense sphere of the nose and aromas, we track through a lifetime of smells from infancy to our teenage and adult years and eventually old age. Our path through life is marked by the desire and passion that arise for each aroma, fettering us. As we get older and wiser, we may respond with equanimity, but if we're not careful, we'll sink back into delusion. To illustrate the sense sphere of the tongue and taste, we have this meditating monk, surrounded by sumptuous delicacies, which he is letting float on by, refusing to get himself tethered by desire and passion for food. He knows the tongue, he knows flavours, and he knows the fetter that arises dependent on both. And he also knows how an unarisen fetter can arise, how an arisen fetter can be removed, and how to prevent fetters arising in the future. Remembering that emotional pain is felt in the body, the sense sphere of the body, and touch is illustrated around a poem by Khalil Gibran. Your pain is the breaking of the shell that encloses your understanding. Even as the stone of the fruit must break, that its heart may stand in the sun, so must you know pain. And could you keep your heart in wonder at the daily miracles of your life, your pain would not seem less wondrous than your joy. And you would accept the seasons of your heart, even as you have always accepted the seasons that pass over your fields. And you would watch with serenity through the winters of your grief. Much of your pain is self-chosen. It is the bitter potion by which the physician within you heals your sick self. Therefore trust the physician and drink his remedy in silence and tranquility. For his hand, though heavy and hard, is guided by the tender hand of the unseen, and the cup he brings, though it burn your lips, has been fashioned of the clay which the potter has moistened with his own sacred tears. The card illustrating the sphere of the mind and the thoughts, emotions, feelings and so on that it detects was inspired by something Bhante said to one of the group a few years ago. The sun always rises, but you can never trust the mind. Oh, I'm always saying the wrong thing. I'm horrible. But he shouldn't have said that. It's all his fault. I wouldn't have said anything so insensitive. He's a brute. No one appreciates me. But I shouldn't have said that. I'm always saying the wrong thing. I'm horrible, horrible, horrible. I'm always saying the wrong thing. Oh, thinking. Thus we learn how to let go of existing fetters. The final card is our illustration of the end of suffering. The ox, or human nature, once tethered, is now free. It no longer needs guidance from our Buddha nature, which rides fearlessly along with us, no longer looking ahead in anticipation of what's to come, but free to gaze serenely into Nibbana, where all things cease. Knowing how fetters arise, how to escape existing fetters, and how to prevent new fetters arising, one is free.